Good morning. Today is Tuesday, June 17th. This is Wake Up with KERA News, and I'm Andrew Garcia. It's going to be sunny, hot, and pretty windy today. Temperatures will be in the mid-90s, but it'll feel about 10 degrees hotter. Yes, sadly, we've arrived at that part of the season. Welcome. Coming up, we'll hear more about how the No Kings protests went in Dallas over the weekend. But first, this news. The Collin County Sheriff was supposed to head to Israel for counterterrorism training this weekend, but the trip got canceled after Israel launched attacks in Iran, right before Sheriff Jim Skinner and 5 of his deputies were scheduled to leave. Some Collin County commissioners expressed safety concerns before the airstrikes. And the Dallas-Fort Worth chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations urged the sheriff and commissioners to cancel the training. It's not yet clear whether it will be rescheduled. The Dallas City Council selected District 2's Jesse Moreno as the new mayor pro tem. That means he'll fill in for the mayor when Eric Johnson is out of town or incapacitated. And Gay Donnell Willis will serve as deputy mayor pro tem, filling in when both Johnson and Moreno are unavailable. Both council members start their new roles immediately. Cities across North Texas participated in the No Kings protests this weekend, opposing the Trump administration policies and recent immigration raids. KERA's Priscilla Rice was at Dallas City Hall, where an estimated 10,000 demonstrators gathered, making it the largest rally in the area. She sat down to talk about what she saw with KERA's Bekah Morr.
So, Priscilla, over the weekend, we saw protests in Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington, all over Collin County. But there was really no violence or arrests, right?
That's right, Bekah. And that shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone because the organizers and local Latino civic leaders, they had a press conference at City Hall on Friday, and they said that they did not want it to be a violent protest. They wanted people to be responsible. There was also concern that, they didn't want to give police an excuse to respond like what we've seen in Los Angeles, right? There was a UNT student, Betsy Grimaldo. She said also, if the Trump administration is calling Hispanics criminals, is calling us things like that, we do not want to fall into that stereotype. So we need to be peaceful. Diana Flores, who's a very prominent, well-known Latina activist, she's part of the Dallas College Board. She said, we don't want another Los Angeles, that she wanted people to engage in their constitutional right of free assembly and things like that. She said, don't fall into this. If you see any agitators or counter protesters that try to provoke you, she's like, just walk away. That's what we were hearing, not only from Latino civic leaders, but just across the board. We're hearing different leaders from throughout North Texas and just people in general say, hey, we want a peaceful protest. We don't want anybody to get hurt.
And so there were no officers in riot gear or using what they call less lethal projectiles like we've seen in LA, nothing like that?
No, not at all. The only really police activity that I saw was blocking the street in front of City Hall. They were wearing vests, but they weren't wearing like any riot gear or anything like that. They were pretty much staying on the edges, directing traffic, but I didn't see any conflict with police, and I didn't see any military presence as well.
What was that protest like? Can you give us a little taste of what it was like being there?
Yeah, I got there probably almost an hour before, right? And even like by 11:15, 11:20, there was about 1,000 people. We heard from Dallas police. A spokesperson said that the crowd had swelled to about 10,000 or so. But you saw people walking from all different directions headed towards City Hall. They brought their handmade signs, so many signs, a lot of No Kings, Protect Immigrants, Familias Unidas. You saw a lot of signs in English and Spanish. You heard chants. It was like calm and chaotic at the same time, right? Because you had so many people. There was so much noise. There was so many different things. You had side conversations. You had people speaking on the loudspeakers, addressing the crowd. I felt a sense of unity because it was very multi-generational. You had kids, you had students, you had people that could be like the age of my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
When you talk to folks who are rallying this weekend, you've mentioned a few already. What was on their minds? What really brought everyone out, brought everyone together for this protest?
It seemed like immigration was the big issue this weekend, especially after we've been seeing, what's going on in LA, even in places here in North Texas where ICE has raided workplaces or has even arrested people coming out of immigration court. I talked to various activists, including Carlos Quintanilla. Carlos is a very well-known activist here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He's with a group called Acción América, which is a Latino immigrant civil rights organization.
The raids at factories, the separation of families, the separation of children from their parents, the fear that has been instilled in our community, that brings me here.
I also heard other people talking about the cuts to different federal funding. So they weren't just there to protest the immigration raids, but they were also protesting people that have lost their jobs and all the people that have been affected because of all these federal cuts.
That was KERA's Priscilla Rice talking to Bekah Morr. The Dallas Wings take on the Golden State Valkyries at home this evening. Unfortunately, Dallas is on a losing streak, while the Valkyries have won their last 3 games. Here's hoping the Wings get the home court advantage tonight. You can beat the heat this summer with a bit of ice skating at the Galleria Dallas. Grab a friend and enjoy their 2 for Tuesdays deal, where you can get 2 tickets for the price of 1. For more information and some other fun things to do, go to our Go See DFW calendar at kera.org/calendar. Thanks so much for listening to Wake Up with KERA News. I'm your host, Andrew Garcia. The show is produced and edited by Shardae White and Bekah Morr. For more news in your inbox, visit kera.org/wakeup. That's where you can subscribe to the Wake Up with KERA News newsletter and get good morning vibes from our colleague, Catherine Hobbs. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at KERATX. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.